Our next segment, Government Taxation Outlook Near and Medium Term. And to deliver the keynote on this topic, we have invited Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa. And introducing him, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hulangamuwa is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, UK, and also a graduate in law from the University of London. He's also the senior partner and head of tax at Ernst Young and vice chairman, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. With over 28 years of experience in taxation, he has specialized in both direct and indirect tax for a range of clients engaged in banking and finance, manufacturing and industry, trading and retailing, telecommunication and other infrastructure development. His specialty remains in advising on transaction tax, international tax, structuring and advising on tax-efficient inward investments for both direct and indirect tax. Mr. Hulangamuwa functions as alternate chairman of the Tax Committee of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and as a member of the Faculty of Taxation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, through which numerous reviews and submissions are made on formulation of tax and other fiscal policy to the various industry groups and the government. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I invite Mr. Duminda Hulangamuwa.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Listening to the person introduced me about my introduction, I don't know that I can do those things now. I was introduced as a person who can design tax-efficient structures, suggesting policy to government, etc. So with the current situation that the economy is facing, and the tax reforms that have already taken place, I'm trying best how to reform my own taxes. In fact, I have my clients who come to me now and ask me how they can reduce their personal taxes as well as their corporate taxes. So I have said that door is closed because I can't suggest anything else because I'm just trying to see how I can reduce my own taxes. Anyway, that is where it is at the moment. So, ladies and gentlemen, the two previous speakers, what they talked to you was what's going to happen in terms of the debt restructuring, interest rates, exchange rates, which are all hanging in there at the moment. Nothing is confirmed. But when I was asked by Ganesh to speak, I said taxation is one area, at least you know which way it's heading. Although we don't like it, however much it is made life painful for us, it is already done in terms of policy reform. When the IMF came for discussions with the government of Sri Lanka, in addition to debt restructuring and making the country sustainable, one of the preconditions they put is that we have to get, in addition to electricity tariff hikes and the petroleum price formula, was to get the tax system under control, and that the government has already done. So as you know, all of us are paying very high taxes now compared to what we paid. The rates have gone up significantly, almost 100% for personal taxes, corporate taxes by 100% and VAT by 100%. Whether all this can bring the tax revenue, as Bingu raised, is a question. Our estimated tax revenue for this year is 3 trillion. So I really don't know whether we can get the 3 trillion even with these increased taxes. Although the paper reported the department has collected higher taxes in the first quarter compared to last year by 300 billion, it is still a very tough target to meet from what I know. So even yesterday when we met the IMF team for the Ceylon Chamber, Bingu was there with me, we were asking them how flexible the IMF would be in the event we are unable to reach the revenue target of 2.5% of a primary account by 2025, for which they were not committed, but at least they were also a little worried whether the target is too optimistic. Because on the expenditure side, I think not everyone says when you talk of high taxes, income tax or the corporate tax, everyone says it's okay, I don't mind paying taxes, or they do mind, but they say we don't mind paying taxes, so long as the government can cut expenditure. Government does not spend money on wasteful expenditure. So there's one other request. But in terms of expenditure, as Bingo and both Gannath will know, is that you can't significantly cut expenditure from where we are now. The only discretionary expenditure we have at the moment is the capital expenditure. Expenditure in terms of government servant salaries is about 1.2 trillion, and subsidies is about on the 1.2 trillion of our total expenditure. And the interest 2.2 trillion which we have to pay are not discretionary, so government can't cut it unless we get a very good restructuring plan where our cash flows will support the gross financing needs. So otherwise, it's not possible to cut government expenditure overnight. It's easy to say the armed forces are too much, public service is too much, but it's a medium-term strategy where you can lay off people for a period of time. So achieving the revenue target is critical to us of 3 trillion. So I think all of us have a very big role to play in it. My chairman is here from the Ceylon Chamber. He knows the amount of submissions, amount of discussions we have had on behalf of all of our members. When we met the president, when we met the IMF team, the central bank and treasury, multiple occasions on how best we can give relief to individuals in terms of the new tax structure. We made a fervent request to keep the tax threshold at 200,000 rupees to see at least, there is support for the tax reform at the lower end. Because if there's politically, if this doesn't sell, there's a risk of the whole program collapsing. So we made multiple attempts and gave different structures, gave different permutations and combinations. But unfortunately, by the time we went into, I think the IMF has already struck the basic parameters of the tax system and they couldn't do anything much. In terms of tax administration, that is one of the biggest complaints I think a lot of people make is, okay, we are paying our taxes, but others are not paying. How do you get this enhance or expand the tax base? Now, to me, as a person who has been in practice for the last 30 years or so, this is a very hackneyed topic of expanding the tax base. How big it is, I really don't know, but I don't think it's as big as people expect to be. I don't think we can make 3 trillion, 4.5 trillion by getting into the net people who don't pay tax. I don't think it's that big, in my view. The income tax, you see, if you look at the poverty levels of Sri Lanka and the per capita incomes, I don't think there are very many people who we can bring into the net that can significantly boost the tax revenues. Because recently, the Illinois Department did a survey. They checked all the electricity bills with the taxpayers that they are registered in the department, corporate and individuals, and 90% were registered for both income tax and VAT. So which means there's some direction that the non-paying community is not significant. In fact, yesterday when we met the IMF also, they was the same view. They said that in order to boost the revenue, they had to concentrate the large taxpayer units, which means those are all registered for tax purposes. So there's pilferage taking place at that level is what their views also. And the amount of tax that is not paid by those who are evading is not a significant number, which I think is correct. So whilst there are people who don't pay tax correctly, there are people who evade the system, which I think an attempt should be to bring them all into the system, but how significant it is, I have my doubts it is very, very significant. As for VAT, also there might be some reform. So from a reform, for what I look for the future in the tax system, I don't think the income tax will get changed a big way from today. I don't think income tax rates will come down in next year either. Because 3 trillion target to get 2.5% of the primary account, I don't think the government can relax any of these taxes. So it will remain the same is my view, at least on the 2-3 years, until such time the economy grows and the amount of collection of taxes grows with the growth in the economy. Because expenditure will be the same. I don't think expenditure might go up slightly, but the revenue will have to go up with the growth in the economy. Therefore, I can't foresee tax rates coming down in the next 2 to 3 years on the income tax side. On the VAT, also rates will remain the same, but they are looking at trying to see how you can remove some of the exemptions already that are in force. If you look at the biggest sectors of the economy, healthcare, both private and public, education, largely public and selectively private, agriculture, public transport, all exempt from VAT. So that contributes a significant portion of the GDP. So naturally, the collection percentage of income to GDP goes down because one sector is largely exempt. So there is a review taking place as to see whether those exempt areas can be brought into the VAT system. May not be the 15% rate, maybe a lesser rate, but they're trying to see how they can bring that in. The other area that is of importance is that they're talking of a property tax. It can be a combination of wealth, gift, and inheritance. So there is an expected revenue in 2025 of almost $500 billion rupees from this particular tax, which is 50% of the income tax collections. So there can be some form of property tax that will come in. It can be targeted the businesses, it can be targeting private individuals. What form and shape, we don't know. The IMF is looking at it now. So that is the only additional big tax that I foresee coming in the next 2 to 3 years, in addition to any increase in the VAT base. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is all free advice I can give you. For anything beyond this, you have to pay me. For the efficient structures the lady introduced me about. Anyway, so with that, I'll leave you all to panel discussion. And any questions that you have, we can discuss at that time. So thank you very much for inviting me, ladies and gentlemen.